and they had just lost their quarterback. So we got a chance. Imagine that, at halftime, 0-0. Late in the third quarter, their center on a fourth down situation snaps the ball clear over the punter's head, rolls into the end zone. We scramble around, recover it. We're ahead 2-0. We held on the entire fourth quarter and won the game, 2-0. Now, we had this great equipment that the Wilson Sporting Goods people gave us, the hammer and sickle on the side of the helmets. These guys charge out in the middle of the field. They're yelling, screaming, jumping up and down. You'd have thought, oh my gosh, they just beat the San Francisco 49ers or something. After all, it was a team without a quarterback. And I looked at it kind of realistic. Then all of a sudden they came charging at me. I didn't know what they were going to do. Maybe they put me up on their shoulder. No, you know what they do in that country? They grab a hold of you and they give it this 1, 2, 3, and throw it. And I knew they couldn't catch. They do it 3 times. That was terrifying. I got by the first one. You know, with Gene Stallings, and I jotted a note or two, and I wanted to pass this along. Take down these 3. I think we all would do this. Gene Stallings was a great coach. He's got 3 rules for his squad. Only 3. That's all we need. Do what is right. Do what is right. Oh gosh, if we can't teach anything else to young people, do what is right. Second one, do the best you can. Do the best you can. Can we ask for anything more than that from an athlete? Do the best you can. If you do the best you can, we'll take on the responsibility of making you a coach. And the last rule, go to class. Have you ever seen 3 better rules than that? Sums it right up. The old ingredients of a profession. You know, when you stop to think about it, the old pro, I got to pass that along. The things that make up a pro. I always think that's the height of everything. I always enjoyed this. Whatever you vividly imagine, you know, you guys, when you start talking about coaching, I got to tell you, and I think I did in the past. Guy came to my office when I was the football coach and general manager at the time, got fired at Denver, really because of illness and fatigue. The fans were just sick and tired. Anyhow, this guy comes into the office. This is the honest to God truth. He went to the secretary and asked if he could talk to Joe Collier. Now, Joe Collier was one of the top defensive coaches in the NFL. Wanted to talk defensive football. So she came in and asked, would that be all right? And I said, what does he want to talk about? Now, he wants to see Joe Collier. And I said, she said he wants to get into coaching. And he wants to get into coaching, send him in here. Came in, sat down, and I quickly went through some small talk. And here, he's selling real estate. He's 30 years old, got 2 kids. Selling real estate. Says he wants to be a football coach. But I asked him very quickly where he was going to be 15 years from now. Some of you may have heard me tell this story. Where are you going to be 15 years from now? I like to ask people, well, do they really have a plan for their life or what? And he said, I'll be a head coach in the National Football League. 30 years old, never coached. Never coached. 30 years old. He's going to be a head coach at 45 in the National Football League. I said, that's impossible. And he put his finger up and he said, you didn't hear me, did you? be a head coach in the National Football League. Gee, I picked up that name real quick, followed him. A couple years later, 1974, they started some World League. He went up to the Portland Storm, as I remember they called him. Dick Corey, one of our staff members, went up there as a head coach. He took him with him as a player coach. Backed up the line at 30 years old, hadn't played any football previous to that. Backed up the line, he helped coach the defense. Then I lost sight of him 3 or 4 years. Ends up as the linebacker coach of the New York Giants. Linebacker coach of the Detroit Lions a year later. Defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions 2 years after that. And 11 years from the time he walked in my office. He had gone down to Cleveland as the defensive coordinator. Marty Schottenheimer was named the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. 11 years. Gee, crickets. I thought to myself, how could you do that? Hey, you got a plan. I hope all of you have a plan for your coaching. I really do. Just like Buddy Stevens was talking about Division 1A football. That may be it. Wish if you get that close, you want to pick up a couple bucks and maybe get in professional football. Because they do pay well these days. But don't be in it for the money either. That's not what I wanted to put over with that. You know, I've always thought of professionals, guys, having been around some great ones. When you talk about Vermeil, the best organized guy I've ever seen. Mike White, most determination, gosh, a guy who would find a way to beat you, I'll tell you. He'd find a way. And I think a Jim Mora, a complete football coach, either way, gosh, and then you talk about the brilliance of Bill Walsh and the offensive talent. But Dick Vermeil, I'll tell you, is hard to beat. I don't think anybody works at it harder. He's better organized. Jay, that may be another sheet. I've got it in my calendar. I would show it. Yeah, you remind me. We got to get that before. And let's run off a couple of copies for him. To see his offense, that's on one sheet of paper. The entire training camp. Every meeting, every single time, where they'll be, scrimmage, Minnesota, we go over here, we go over there. First preseason game, all the pre-preparation, pads, everything. Every speech, guys. Can you imagine? When I was back there for the draft, every speech that he will make to the squad is already in a notebook. Every single speech. You know, do we organize like that? The guy is just flat brilliant. And of course the brilliance of Walsh. But you see some of that kind of talent and you're just excited, I'll tell you. But whenever you see a professional, I always think of 3 things. Number one, you gotta love it. If you don't love it, then you're not going to be ever at the height of your profession. If you don't love to work with kids and having a love affair with your job, having a love affair with the people you're around, having a love affair with your players, hey, listen,